everyone, and welcome to FPC NFL Sunday. That's right, it's NFL Championship weekend. It's the AFC and NFC Championship game. We have first up, we have the Chiefs, the AFC Invitational, or the Chiefs Invitational nowadays, hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. Then, of course, tonight the Rams hosting the 49ers, with hopes of remaining in Los Angeles for the next couple of weeks before Super Bowl 56. So good morning, fellas. How we doing today? We ready for some football?
Well, first off, Braden can never let Ian forget that one. The AFC, the Chiefs Invitational. You got to ride that one for years, Braden.
Yeah, it feels kind of weird, and obviously we're going to talk about somebody here in a second. It just starting to feel a little more surreal around the NFL right now. Just Big Ben retiring, of course, earlier this week. So AFC young guns now getting to kind of take over.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, and that's obviously, we're here on Championship Sunday. That the focus is obviously going to be on the championship games, but the news broke yesterday, so we think. I mean, there's still some slight doubt, and maybe that's a little bit of me thinking, okay, maybe this isn't quite true, but the news broke yesterday that Tom Brady, Mr. 7-time Super Bowl champion, is going to retire now. And that's, kind of as crazy as it is to think that a 44-year-old announcing his retirement would be shocking. It is, because in my very humble and I think right opinion, he retires as still the very best in the game, and at a level that just, I mean, you would think he still has a lot of great football in him, and that's absurd to think about at 44 years old currently, and would be 45 at the time of next season's kickoff. So, look, I mean, I was 14 years old when the guy was drafted when I lived in Massachusetts, so I've been a lifelong Brady fan. I got his Michigan jersey hanging up over my shoulder. I got his Patriots jersey hanging up behind me. It's definitely going to be tough if this is the end. I hope it's not. I really do hope that we get one more year. My gut tells me this is, and Ricky and I spoke about this right before we got on the air. My gut tells me this is more about timing and Brady wanting to announce it the way he wanted to announce it, and this leaking out, as opposed to, no, they just got it wrong. He's actually still considering coming back. I hope. I mean, look, if anyone's going to do something out of spite, it would be Tom Brady. I don't know if playing an entire extra NFL year falls under that category, but I'm kind of hoping and just wishing and praying that, maybe we do get one more year. But if it is the end, unquestionably, in my opinion, and I think a lot of others share this as well, unquestionably, greatest quarterback to ever play this football game. Arguably the greatest football player, and I think there's a very good argument for that, considering what he's done, what he's accomplished, both statistically, team, individually, and again, depending on what day it is. And if you ask Antonio Brown or not, you're not going to get a single bad word said about him. And more often than not, you're getting people praising his teamwork and leadership, something that's you can't put a statistic to, so you can't put it on a stat sheet, but it's just as important as anything in the game of football. And I think he embodied that more than anyone who's ever played that game. And that's saying something, considering some of the greats that have come and gone in this game. So if it is the end, and again, I'm saying if, because, deep down, I'm hoping, I really am. I'm hoping that it's not. This is 28-3. Maybe Julian Edelman's catch just happened yesterday when Tom Brady Sr. called in and said he's not made up his mind yet. And we're going through the process. Sooner or later, that coin toss is going to happen, and Brady's going to come back and come back for one more season. But truly, if it is the end, greatest football player ever, in my opinion, and there's precedent for this in another sport. I think they should waive the 5-year waiting period and induct Tom Brady in 2023, because if anyone is more deserving of that honor, it's Tom, who, not just in football, but if you think about all the GOATs quote unquote, of all major sports, team sports in North America. Let's, before people across the pond get upset about me not talking about soccer. But if you talk about the greats among all North American popular sports, none of their, Wayne Gretzky's, the Michael Jordans, all those guys, none of them.
Not Bobby Orr?
Look, you're killing my flow. I'm going to mute. No greats across any of these sports ever retired, not only retired at the top of their position, at the top of their game, but none of them sustained the level of success late in their career and after their initial boom. So Wayne Gretzky, he wins 4 Stanley Cups early in his career, goes on to have an incredibly statistical, dominant career, but never really achieved that success late in his career. And by the end of it, he wasn't the best player in the sport. He was great. He was the great one. He wasn't the best player in the sport. Same with Michael Jordan. And now, again, he's a little bit different because his 6 Super Bowls, his 6 championships were condensed in a matter of 8 years. But early on, there wasn't that success. And later on, there wasn't that success. Now, he's an example of an athlete who prior was probably a gold standard of 40-year-old athletes. And you're talking about a small percentage of what Michael Jordan really was. And he certainly wasn't the best player in the league at that time. Now, Wayne Gretzky had his, honor, his Hall of Fame honor expedited, just like, I mentioned there was precedent in the NHL where he didn't have to wait that 5-year period. And if you want to compare Tom to Wayne Gretzky, well, I don't, you should be comparing Wayne to Tom at this point. I mean, same with Michael Jordan to Tom Brady. So in my opinion, forget the 5 years. I mean, why do we need to wait 5 years? If any player in the history of the NFL deserves that honor, it's Tom Brady. Now, I'm not with, some people have suggested jersey number retirement. In football, you can't do that really, especially with number 12. I mean, the most common generic quarterback number you can have out there. But I do think that there is some merit to naming the Super Bowl MVP trophy after him because it doesn't have a name. And, well, 5 Super Bowl MVP trophies, I don't think that's ever going to be matched. I'm just saying, I just don't think it's going to happen. So I guess to sum it all up, incredible career. I hope it's not the end. I hope we're getting one more. But how fitting is it that his very last touchdown pass was a 55-yard bomb for a guy who has, for much of his career, been told he can't throw deep and only does dinks and dunks. So I hope that maybe I'm not just penting up all this rage and emotion and I'm not going to break down next week and you're never going to hear from me again. But I really do hope that he does come back. And if not, hats off. And I will be building my shrine starting tomorrow. So rant over. Rant over.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I was rolling.
I figured as a Boston fan, though, you'd say Bobby.
Well, no. Well, look, I'm not. But here's the thing, Kyle. And people accuse me of being a homer or fan. No, I love what Bobby Orr did. There's no way you can compare, as great as he was for what he did. You cannot compare the longevity against what Wayne Gretzky did. And it's not just because Wayne Gretzky played a long time. And I see that a lot with Tom Brady. Oh, well, of course no, it's not. Of course. I mean, you're talking about sustained success over 2 decades, something that, as great as what we think Patrick Mahomes is, he has to continue what he's doing currently 15 more years easily. That's not that easy to do. So you're talking about, I love Bobby Orr, and I see the argument for, pure talent. But then again, that's when you get into, well, this person, that person. No, longevity counts. Like playing and being there counts. I mean, it's we all love Barry Sanders, but I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say he was the greatest running back of all time. Maybe his potential could have boomed that way, but he just didn't do it. He didn't do it for that period of time. And I think Tom's success combined with the longevity, combined with the just absurdly over-the-top postseason accomplishments relative to his peers, it's going to be a hard while to match that. And it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. But that just means we're really officially really into that new era of NFL football because Braden mentioned obviously Ben Roethlisberger retiring. We saw Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers in the coming years. Aaron Rodgers is still up in the air. I think he's obviously going to be playing, but for who knows? It's going to be interesting moving forward, and I'll be excited to see the AFC because I think it's going to be an incredibly fun conference to watch for a while. And I would say this to Chiefs fans, and maybe Braden can back me up and give me a break from talking here for a moment. If this is likely their best chance right now to win another Super Bowl. And I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not trying to downplay what they've done. What I'm saying is I think they've taken perfect advantage, and this is exactly what great teams do. They've taken perfect advantage of the situation that presented itself to them over the last couple of years. Tom Brady and the Patriots were done. Their reign in the AFC was over. Brady left. That opened up the door for this Chiefs team to essentially dominate while some of these other teams found out who they were. Buffalo was growing. We see Cincinnati growing. We see some of these other young teams growing. Well, they're grown. Cincinnati's grown. Buffalo's grown. I mean, these teams are they're no longer the kind of the little brother, in my opinion. They're going to be competing for those Super Bowls moving forward. So, in my opinion, and this is a great way to transition into this game and how important it is, and it's crazy as it sounds to speaking of the Chiefs and Chiefs fans, this is an incredibly important, not only AFC Championship game, but potentially Super Bowl for the legacy of this team. Because I think, and I know Braden doesn't think this way, but I know a lot of fans are looking at this and saying, wow, this is going to be easy. It's going to get infinitely more difficult moving forward. And for so many more reasons than just the other teams around them are getting a lot better. So saying that, we'll say this. Big AFC Championship game to start today, 3:05. The Chiefs, 4th straight year hosting it, have a chance to avenge a regular season loss and get to the Super Bowl. Do you agree, Braden? This is, and maybe easiest isn't the right word, but relative to what I feel like is going to be the future of this conference, this might be the best / easiest / best opportunity for the Chiefs to win a second Super Bowl early in this run.
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I think when you look at just everybody that lost last weekend, that's kind of something that I noted on the FPC Chiefs podcast early this week. I mean, everything's kind of set up well with Tennessee out. You don't really have to face that running game, that play action game. Green Bay and Tampa Bay, you got the two best quarterbacks in the NFC now out. So this is kind of one of those years where I think, especially this team right now, what they've been the last 3 years, they've kind of remained the same roster wise. So I think this is kind of for this group, their last chance to kind of get one more, especially because I think we'll see this team get even younger and kind of start to surround Mahomes in different ways moving forward. So like you said, you never want to kind of downplay the Bengals and obviously the two NFC teams that are left. But I think when you look at kind of what Kansas City is doing right now, I think I know there's always points where people kind of point to, but I think this is just the most like locked in they've kind of been in a long time, maybe since that Super Bowl win 2 years ago. So I think you can just see that this is kind of a moment they know they have to just kind of continue to keep pushing. And I think just kind of hearing the mic'd up moments and kind of just videos on the sidelines, I think this group kind of understands this is one you just have to kind of take care of before some other transitions take place.
Yeah, and I'll let you speak here in a second, Ricky, just to make sure you're still alive, because I don't think I've heard you all day, because I've been talking this whole time. No, and I think the players realize it too. I mean, that's the thing. I don't think the players take it for granted. I don't think the players are sitting there thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. This is more or less the kind of the feeling of the certain fan bases. But Ricky, do you generally agree with this is probably going to be the best opportunity for the Chiefs moving forward?
Yes and no. And one of the things I think you mentioned, Ian, is kind of the road being easier. I mean, you could go back even to Tom Brady having to go through Peyton Manning twice, both in the early stages and the late stages, having to go through Russell Wilson, having to go through different styles of quarterbacks. Josh Allen looks to be on the right track. And I hope the Bills learn that, hey, just because you didn't get the ball in overtime doesn't mean you can't win the Super Bowl the next year. I mean, look what the Chiefs did. Cincinnati's there, Indy's, but they're there, but they're not there.
They need a quarterback.
Yeah. And one of the things I think you look at with Tom Brady, when I reflected yesterday, as a kid, your parents tell you you're never out of it till you're out of it. And then you get to a stage where you're like, yeah, it's over. Forget it. It's not going to happen. Well, Tom Brady made you think you always had a chance. And Patrick Mahomes is that. You always have a shot with him at quarterback. Like, you could get down 21-0 at a playoff game and win by 28. You can be down 3 with 13 seconds left and kick a field goal. Like, he's the new generation's Brady in the sense of you're never out of it. He's going to come up with something out of nothing. And to go to a 4th straight AFC championship, to host it, if the coin toss flips his way, he could be playing for a chance at a 4th Super Bowl in a row, at least appearance-wise. The fact that he's only thrown 1 interception at home in the postseason in his career, it's insane what we're watching. And I think the Chief era may not be as long as New England's, but Burrow still has something to prove, even if starting today. Allen, I think, is proved enough, but maybe a little bit more. Herbert has something to prove. And we don't know what the AFC looks like. We don't really know what the NFC looks like. The NFC road is easier because once Brady's out, Rodgers, who knows if he goes to the AFC. And what's left? Dak, Stafford, what's there in San Francisco? I mean, the NFC might be easier. Maybe just the road to the Super Bowl might be tougher than getting to the actual game itself at this point.
What do you think, Kyle?
Well, I mean, you're asking the question today, but the day of the AFC championship game. So undoubtedly, you'd say this is their best opportunity as opposed to next year when I'd say they have good odds of coming back to the AFC championship game, but you can't guarantee that. So I'm going to take the easy way out and say, of course, because they only have to win 2 more games to win the Super Bowl as opposed to go through an 18-game regular season every year.
I mean, not so much, not in a vacuum. Obviously, like they're here now. They can win and go to the Super Bowl. Obviously, right now is their best chance. I'm saying in terms of the bigger picture of the AFC, because I mean, let's face it, the AFC was, and again, this is nothing to take away from the Chiefs because we saw them dominate while New England was still New England. But let's face, I mean, last year the AFC was really just kind of a bowl of pudding. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it was soft. It was. I mean, Tennessee was. I mean, they were all right. I mean, New England,
that Buffalo game, though. I mean, they you definitely can't tell me that Buffalo game that they just won in overtime was an easy game. Like that took everything that the Chiefs were. I don't think most teams could do that. So
I didn't say
the year before, not this year.
I'm talking about last year. I'm talking about last year, like 2020. Like was really a soft year. So I'm saying the AFC has been gradually getting better after, once Tom Brady left that conference, it became just an absolute fight for, supremacy. Now, Kansas City, based on what their abilities are, took advantage of it. And that's exactly what you're supposed to do when you're a great team. But we're seeing this AFC conference, the trajectory of it is going from, really soft and in a very awkward transition to it's going to get infinitely more harder and more difficult for these teams because you have teams like the Bengals, because you have teams like the Bills, who it's safe to say that these teams are going to continue. How much they progress, who knows, but they're going to be there. They're going to be an issue. So I'm not talking about this year. I'm not talking about this AFC championship. I'm saying just right now, this moment, if the Chiefs are going to be looking back at this era of Chiefs football, and this, mind you, is prior to the big boom in Patrick Mahomes' cap hit, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult to sustain everything. This is the best opportunity if they want to win multiple Super Bowls in a period of time that actually creates the argument. Now, I believe that dynasties need 3, and I also kind of feel like you need a back-to-back in that. There's some discussion there. We're not going to really get into that, but for this Chiefs team, the Patriots took advantage of moments like this before and won multiple Super Bowls. So that's what I'm trying to say is right now, this is that opportunity for the Chiefs to not just be a team like the Seahawks who won a Super Bowl and went to another but lost. This is a team that's going to win multiple Super Bowls. And then basically from here on out, no matter how difficult it gets, they're playing with house money. Because if they just happen to go to one more Super Bowl and win it, all of a sudden you're talking about, one of the better runs in the history of the NFL, as opposed to well, maybe they come out and play a dud today and lose that great opportunity to be that. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that just right now this is the best opportunity because they're here. I'm just saying the AFC is getting better, and I think it's going to be a great conference, assuming what we've seen in the last couple of years is going to continue to grow.
I just think that there is validity to what Ricky's saying in that the AFC still has to catch up with him, right? Like as great as Josh Allen's been, but
I mean, the AFC was trying to catch up and didn't to Tom Brady his entire run. Doesn't mean he won the Super Bowl every year. But 2 years ago, when you're playing Bill O'Brien in the Houston Texans in the divisional round, I'm sorry. Comeback aside, I'm sorry. That's not, that's not terrible. I mean, look, if the Patriots played them, they blow them out just the same. It is what it is. The Patriots have had some quote unquote cupcakes in the past before, but the AFC felt a little bit softer immediately after Brady left. And credit to the Chiefs, they took advantage of it.
Well, the Titans did beat the Titans are the team that kicked Brady out, so I don't know. I think you are being a little disrespectful to how good that team is.
Coming off of 3 straight Super Bowl appearances, they didn't make it out of the divisional round, so big deal. I'm saying, in general.
Well, but I'm just saying that Titans team is really good, and that they have had a tough road.
Are they?
I don't know. I think so.
I
think they like the Chiefs had to kind of come back in that one too. I don't know.
Well, the Chiefs have to come back. I mean, again,
I don't know that the AFC is going to get that much better than it is now relative to them. Like I think every year we're still going to go in thinking the Chiefs are the favorite, right? Kind of with Brady, and they're not going to win every year. So
the Bills and the Bengals have peaked. They're not going to do anything better than what they're doing right now.
They might not. Back. I mean, I think there's still.
You can say that about every single team in the AFC. You can say that about the Chiefs. Maybe this is it. Maybe they fall back after this. Maybe the Titans. I mean, I don't know if the Titans are good. I thought they were good. Then I thought they were bad. And then I thought they were good again. And then I thought they were bad, which tells me I have no idea what they are because they don't win. They don't show up in big moments. And who, big whoop. They beat the Patriots after they went on 3 straight runs to a Super Bowl. In 4 and 5 years, like, you know what? It didn't work out for the Patriots. Then that was it. That doesn't mean the Titans were running the AFC. It just meant that they were opportunistic and won a football game. It happens. But in general, the AFC, I mean, the Cleveland Browns were in the AFC championship game. I mean, in the divisional round a year ago and lost essentially to a combination of Patrick Mahomes and Case Keenum. You can't tell me that the Cleveland Browns are a formidable team in the AFC. Look at what they did last year. So I look at the Bengals. I look at the Bills, who now the Bills especially have 2 years of, showing this and really, in most situations beat the Chiefs twice in the final minute of that game. So yeah, they're getting better. The Bengals with a healthy Joe Burrow. Yeah, they're getting better. So this conference is going to get better. And it certainly is going to get better than what it was the last couple of years when, Patrick Mahomes was clearly the best quarterback in the league or in the conference. And that Chiefs team was clearly the best team in the conference because guess what? Tom Brady no longer existed and couldn't, and it doesn't even mean that Brady and the Patriots were always the better team. It just meant that no matter what, the Chiefs could be hosting the AFC championship game. And guess what? The Patriots would probably be picked by many and probably win, just like they did in 2018. So
the last thing I'll say is to your credit, the Chiefs have Mahomes has only lost 2 playoff games and both have been to Tom Brady, right? So
that's what I'm saying. So just the exit of Brady itself made that conference infinitely worse. And it doesn't take anything away from the Chiefs. It just means the Chiefs were good enough to take advantage and sustain. Like winning is not easy in this league. It just doesn't happen. So anyone who can sustain winning for multiple years in a row, that's incredible. And people have just kind of chalked it up to just, of course they won. Of course they won. No, winning is hard. So I don't care who your opponents are. If you do sustain success, that's impressive. But that's not to say that, going through, like I said, I'm not a big Baker Mayfield fan, but going through Baker Mayfield and having to go against Bill O'Brien and the Texans, anyone who's ever listened to me, I don't think I've ever said one good thing about the Texans. So,
or Bill O'Brien.
Unless it's not the coordinator. So,
is the quarterbacks now going to be what Peyton, Roethlisberger, Flacco, and those Raven teams were to Tom Brady? And then at the same time, can you have a case where, like in the 2010s, Brady was carrying teams to Super Bowls? Mahomes is kind of, to the Chiefs defense getting better, he's carrying teams to get to this point. is it flipped where down the road they build a defense where Mahomes has the cap hit and the defense starts to carry, and maybe Mahomes has
I don't look. I'll push back on that a little bit because I'm not going to sit here and say that Mahomes can't. Because look, his advantage right now is in a wide open passing league with two of the most dangerous weapons in the league. I mean, look, when you can give the ball to Tyreek Hill and he can run horizontally across the field and then up the field 65 yards for a touchdown and outrun a Pro Bowl all-pro safety, that's a formidable weapon to have, something that Brady didn't have early on in his career for sure, and is certainly not in an era that did that. So I wouldn't say Mahomes necessarily has carried to that extent which you're speaking of, those years, the 2010s, so to speak, where Brady was just out of this world great and having to do it with some really bad teams. I'm waiting, and this is where I pause a little bit when it comes to the elevation of Mahomes in a historical sense. Obviously, if he wins another Super Bowl, that's putting him up at a much higher level, even at a young age. But as I said before, we need to see what happens when he's out there with Austin Collies and the when Brandon LaFell is your best wide receiver, or you're dealing with a season-ending injury to Travis Kelce, or Tyreek Hill is no longer there. Like, this isn't a knock on him. Like, his greatness is his greatness. But if we're going to jump into the realm of comparing him to the all-time greats, specifically Brady, that's when these questions and my hesitation comes into play, because I need to see that first. I'm not just going to assume that, with the perfect offensive scenario right now, that tells me that even in the worst scenario, he's going to be just as efficient or just as great. I don't know that. I mean, I really don't. And it's not a knock on him. It's just, I'm not so quick to assume with a lot of these people. It was easy with Brady because we saw it. We've seen it for years and years and years. So you could say, of course he's going to work through this. Of course he's going to do this, because we've seen it. I haven't seen it with Mahomes yet. And it's not a knock on him because, he hasn't really had that opportunity. So how can you fault him for not doing something that he hasn't had a chance to do yet? I mean, look, 2 years from now, say Travis Kelce does have a season-ending injury. Maybe Tyreek Hill misses half the season, and he's playing these games with these guys that are, not household names, and all of a sudden it's still winning games. Well, that's a big deal. That's when you say, wow, okay, this is what I'm seeing, 2 Super Bowls. He's doing this type of stuff. He's still putting up these numbers. That's when you take that next step with him. And that's my opinion. So, and I guess it's a very long way to push back at your original point of just him carrying. I haven't seen.
No, it's not carrying in the sense of, like, look, their Chiefs secondary doesn't have Sterling Moore and doesn't have those guys either. Their defense is still pretty good, but their defense isn't also, and Braden could agree or disagree with not, is not elite like defenses that Brady had in the early 2000s that were elite and helping him in a young, as he was maturing along. So again, I'm not comparing Mahomes to Brady. I'm kind of looking at it big picture as Chiefs run to Patriots run, because in a way, this has kind of been like the Patriots of I was trying to get 14, where people doubted them, and then at 2-4, and then they went on a long win streak, and who knows where it goes from here.
Yeah, the Chiefs were 4th in the division at one point, right, Braden?
Right. Yeah. And I think back to kind of like Ian's point, I think just what this means for the Chiefs is the NFL standing out for long. I mean, you don't know what the future is going to hold. So I think just talking about the weapons around, Mahomes, Tyreek Hill only signed 1 more year and all that. You don't know what this team's going to really look around Mahomes a few years from now. It could look mostly the same. It could be entirely different. So I think that's what is big for the Chiefs, is this version of the team. It's maybe their last biggest chance, or whatever you want to say, easiest chance to kind of win with this group before maybe making a bigger transition, so to speak, around him.
Let's just say maybe let's say the margin of error gets a lot thinner moving forward, in my opinion. And look, and if they go out and they this could be a game, in my opinion, it's either going to be very close, in which I think the Bengals might win, or the Chiefs are just going to blow them out, and neither situation would surprise me. We saw the Bengals play them fairly well and obviously win earlier in the season. Obviously, and to Ricky's point about, just Mahomes is, there's something about him that reeks greatness. and it's something that not every quarterback has. So, what happened in the regular season, I'm not necessarily concerned about because it is the playoffs. But look, I mean, these are two teams that are eerily similar if you're looking at the quote unquote tail of the tape on the screen here. Roughly score about the same. They give up about the same. The Chiefs are slightly better in each category. Passing yards per game are about the same. The Chiefs are slightly better in the rushing department, but for the most part, I mean, you're talking about spitting images of one another. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited for this matchup. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Based on what I saw last week out of the Chiefs, I'm not, don't really have that much confidence that, slowing down a high-powered offense is necessarily going to be in the cards for them. But then again, the Bengals, who knows? I mean, they played well last week, but go back a few weeks ago, they gave up over 30 points. So I'll start with you, Ricky. Initial, I guess, not initial, but how did I'll ask you this. How did the Bengals win this game? Because I think we all see the Chiefs as having the massive advantage here. It's going to take a huge upset, this, that, and the other. All these things have to go right. How and what has to go right for the Bengals for them to win this game?
Zach Taylor needs to take a page out of Sean McDermott's playbook, and that is if you got fourth down at midfield, if you got fourth down in a not so short territory, go for it. Because the only way you're going to beat the Chiefs is scoring touchdowns. I mean, if you go back to that Week 17 game, it was the Chiefs lost the game in which they committed 10 penalties, in which they had a kickoff, or not a kickoff, but a return for a touchdown come off the board, where Jamar Chase had a historic day, and they still lost on a last-second field goal. And the Chiefs didn't turn the football over. So you had to have a perfect day almost in sense to win that game. You can't duplicate that, but the only way you think you can is if Jamar Chase is doubled, do what the Bills did last week. What's Cincinnati's Gabe Davis? Is it T. Higgins? Is it Tyler Boyd? Feed that option rather than try to force it to Jamar Chase to get his numbers. And the other way would be Joe Mixon. Mm-hmm. Joe Mixon's been great catching the ball. He's kind of been bad running the ball. The last time he's rushed for over 70 yards was early December against Pittsburgh. I don't think Joe Mixon needs to run for 125 yards, but at the very least to keep Mahomes somewhat on the sideline, is 85 yards realistic in this case? Because he can catch it, but I feel like at some point, even Buffalo did it on their opening drives last week, you got to run the ball a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I would go to is Joe Mixon, just because I think as much as Burrow can, kind of hang with most people and winning with the deep passing game and winning with tempo and lighten up the scoreboard, I think they have to kind of keep Mahomes and that offense on the sideline because the Chiefs have kind of been willing to win more methodically at times this year. But I think just being able to do what they did last week, I think there's going to be maybe a want to kind of push the pace a little bit more this week. So I think keeping Mahomes on the sideline as much as possible with Joe Mixon or even Samaje Perine, I think that's got to be kind of on the top of the Bengals list here.
Well, and to give credit to what Braden and Ricky are saying, I'm looking at Football Outsiders offensive line metrics from 2021. And if you look at the adjusted line yards, that's generally measuring the offensive line's run efficiency. They're ranked 15th in the league with 4.36 yards. So basically about average. And, we know the story last week. They allowed 9 sacks. They allowed 55 sacks all season, 9.1%. Second worst in the league. The only team that was worse was the Chicago Bears because they had games in the regular season where they were allowing 9 sacks. So from an offensive line standpoint, and I know not all the, I would say, maybe about a third of those sacks at least were on Burrow last week of just him holding the ball too long. But still, I think that offensive line looks much better running the football than they are pass protection. So because I know a few of those sacks were against the offensive line, player, not shifting the line properly. You end up with a guard protecting nobody, and suddenly, someone's coming after the quarterback free, right? Like clearly there's things that the line isn't doing well pass protection wise. So I think from an offensive line standpoint, what you guys are saying, it makes sense. They should be running more. And from a game management standpoint, that makes sense too. Because I do think Zach Taylor, especially when they've gotten the league, has kind of gone to a bit of a shell and they've run too much at times. But this is the type of game where that's going to be the case. But I almost want to flip it the other way and say the same thing. To me, the Chiefs kind of have to be, we don't want to go to another overtime game like we did last week. They probably want to win this game comfortably. They don't want to right? Obviously, right? Everyone would rather do that. So I wonder, like, I think for a huge key to the win for the Bengals is actually to stop the Chiefs running game. Don't let the Chiefs control the clock. We know Burrow can kind of Chase can kind of score at will from any point of the field. And so like the Bengals, they can match the quick tempo with the Chiefs if they need to. So I think it's not a total detriment to them if they have to, but certainly I think the Chiefs, if they can control the clock themselves, that probably puts them at a huge advantage. Not letting their defense get really tired against that Bengals high-powered offense. I think that might be the biggest key is stopping. I don't know. I expect, and maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, Braden, but just the way he looked against Buffalo, I expect this is going to be Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's game. I think the Buffalo game was like when he ran it, he seemed effective. I know they still brought Jerick McKinnon in, but I wonder if that was just the ease up for Edwards-Hilaire. I think knowing that they've especially got 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, I think this is a heavy Edwards-Hilaire game and he's going to play most of the snaps. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd say from a rushing perspective, Clyde probably gets more of the snaps, and I will say they kind of saved some run play calls for him in the postseason that they didn't necessarily show early, where they kind of try to motion the tight end or the slot receiver into a tighter alignment and then have Clyde bounce it outside as quick as he can. So some run play calls are different. They haven't really shown. So I think Clyde will continue to get most of those.
Yeah, and I would lump in the short screen and short passing game into that stop the run to slow them down.
Yeah.
Just like for years it was with the Patriots, the short passing game was an extension of the running game. Same thing with the Chiefs, and I don't think there's any better coach at drawing up those type of plays than Andy Reid. So in that offensive coaching staff. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Bengals attempt to do that. I do think they are going to have to run the ball a bit, and if they can sustain some efficiency running the ball, that's going to take the pressure off Joe Burrow and the pass rush that's coming at him, because that is something that he's going to have to improve on moving forward, is his just pocket awareness and knowing when and where to get rid of the ball and not to take a sack. So, but as we can see, he as well as Mahomes are certainly capable of exploding at any minute, certainly with their ability and the folks that they have to throw the ball to. So, all right, let's get into our prop bets before we actually pick this game. We're going to start right there with Burrow, with Patrick Mahomes. Who's going to have more passing yards in this game? And as we learned last week, it doesn't necessarily mean you win the game. It just means you might have to have your arm do a little bit more of the work. So I'll start with you, Ricky, and we'll work our way down. Who has more passing yards in the AFC Championship game?
It's hard not to go for Patrick Mahomes, so I think he's the pick here, largely because even if he does run the ball a little more, which I think he's still going to be the leading rusher, because now he can run around and not worry about having to get hurt because it's the postseason. You don't have to really care for that much. I just think until Patrick Mahomes doesn't win a passing battle, you have to pick him. Burrow's going to have a close matchup last week with Mahomes, and Allen was 378 to 330. Could be the same here, but Mahomes gets a little bit more yards.
I'll go Mahomes as well. I think, like Ian said, the quick passing game, the screen game, we're seeing the Chiefs get a lot more yards after the catch than maybe what they were early in the season. So kind of think that's going to continue enough for them. So I'll go Mahomes.
They were close last week. Obviously, they weren't head-to-head, but even though the Bengals only scored 19 points, Burrow only threw for 348. I think there's more meat on the bone there. Now, Mahomes can easily hit 400 as well, but maybe just to be different, I think I'm going to go Burrow.
All right. Next, if I can get this one. There we go. Tyreek Hill. Is he going to have a big game this week? Over under 7.5 catches in this game.
I'm going to go under. I think one of the things we've seen, at least from Mahomes, is maybe this is more of a Kelsey game over the middle, but also you could see more Byron Pringle, who's had 7 targets the last few games. Mecole Hardman had a big 53-yard catch in the first matchup. He was their leading receiver in that game, ironically, which is weird. That's another thing going against Cincinnati. But Mahomes can spread the ball around, use the running backs. Maybe Hill hits a big one. I don't see him getting – we have it at, 7.5? Yeah, I think he can have 6. I'll go under.
I'll go over. I do like what Ricky said about spreading the ball around, but I think there's just something about playoff time. It seems like Tyreek Hill's kind of getting these kind of force-fed passes once in a while as well. So I think he'll have a few of those to where hitting that number may be a little bit easier as the game goes on, as the possessions get higher. So I'll go over.
6 times this year, including the playoffs, Hill's hit the over at least 8 catches, and I don't think he's ever gotten 8. It's either 9 or double digits. So he's either smashing that over or the 12 times he didn't this year, though, is kind of compelling me to say twice as often he didn't hit this over as he has hit it. So I'm going to go with under as well. I kind of like Ricky's theory of he could, even with 7 catches, he could still get over 100, 150 yards. I know I'm putting numbers in your mouth, Ricky, but you were kind of saying that with the big play. So yeah, I like him to go under.
All right, Travis Kelce. If it's not a Tyreek Hill day, as Ricky says, maybe it's a Travis Kelce day. So does that mean he catches a touchdown today, Ricky?
What is it? 5 straight games with a touchdown. Where was this when I drafted him in fantasy this year? My gosh. I remember when I said on the show it took him till week 1 to get 2 touchdowns in a game. I'll go yes, just because in the red zone, hard to cover him. This guy shows up in the playoffs. Be crazy not to think he's not going to score today, which means I'm going to pick him to score and he doesn't. But hey, we're going to go with yes, he scores.
I'm going to go yes as well. I think you look at the red zone. Kansas City's done a lot more play action down there, kind of a little bit more than we've seen in recent postseasons. And we know that shovel pass or underhand flip is always on the table. So maybe via that variety, we can see Kelce. So I'm going to go yes.
I was going to talk about the goal line guide later, but this actually seems like a good time to introduce that. So one of the big kind of determining factors here is both teams passing in the red zone. Both teams running in the red zone are just under 50%, 41% for the Chiefs, 46% for the Chiefs, 41% for the Bengals. That's touchdowns scored on plays inside the 5-yard line. But passing, the Chiefs have scored touchdowns on 58% of plays as opposed to only 40% for the Bengals. So I really think the red zone is where the Chiefs could really make the difference. So I'm going to say yes, that Kelce keeps the streak alive, and that 58% kind of looms large, and he's probably the most likely, if anyone, it's going to be him.
All right. Here we go. Back to the receivers. We haven't talked about Jamar Chase too much, but that doesn't mean we're ignoring him because we know he's capable of putting up big numbers, and he did so in the first matchup. Does he do it again, or is he going to put up bigger numbers receiving yards wise than Tyreek Hill?
I don't think you can do 266 again. That would be insane if you were to do that. But I think Chase will have more yards than Hill, just because I think Joe Burrow is going to lean on him in those big situations. Mahomes has more options in those big spots, but Burrow, outside of maybe Boyd, who has stepped up, or we've seen T. Higgins kind of disappear. I think we need to see him kind of get back into the game a little bit. But Chase is that reliable target. I think even if he has fewer catches than Hill, he'll hit more big ones. So I'll take Chase.
I'll go Chase as well. Don't really have a whole lot to add other than I just think that I think there's times where Tyreek Hill is kind of like always leaving some yards out there. You'll see him kind of just duck down and give himself up or go out of bounds when there's still yards to be had. Where I don't really think Chase is kind of ever really thinking that way. I think he wants to score on every play. So I'll go Chase.
Chase is too young, right? He hasn't learned yet about the worries of getting injured. But I mean, I picked Burrow to have more passing yards than Mahomes, so I have to pick Chase to have more passing yards than Hill, or receiving yards than Hill. Maybe even more passing yards. Maybe they play a trick play with Chase. But I think the Bengals need that passing game more than the Chiefs need theirs. I think the Chiefs can rely on their run game more, and that's kind of why I went Burrow over Mahomes with passing yards, and I'm going to go Chase over Hill with receiving yards.
All right, let's get to that rushing. Oh, good. Sorry, I muted my mic there for a second. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon, who has more total yards in the AFC Championship. Not just rushing. That was my mistake. It's all total, all-purpose yards. And if it is a CEH day, perhaps he's the one to go with here.
It's just tough to trust Helaire, man. And like he'll have a game where he'll have a good one like last week, and then he'll go out there and lay a huge egg the following week. Just off consistency, and you never know. The Chiefs tend to throw running backs out of anywhere, and they have good games. So based off those odds, I'll take Jerick McKinnon.
I'm going to go McKinnon as well. They're like Ricky's point. I think there's times where Clyde, you see him have games like last week, getting out to the open field pretty easily. And then there's times where the hole's there. He doesn't really see it, runs right into the block. So I just think, especially with how difficult McKinnon's been able to bring down in the open field, getting a lot of yards after the catch, I think that'll continue. So I'll go with McKinnon.
I mean, McKinnon was tied for third on the team in targets last week, so they've clearly trust him in the passing game. I think the total yards might lead me towards McKinnon, but I don't know. I think this is a game where Edwards-Helaire explodes, and maybe even though he might only have one or two receptions, I think he has such a monster game on the ground that it makes up for any lack of receptions that would favor McKinnon. So I'm going to go with Edwards-Helaire here.
Well, as you can see, that was our last prop bet. So let's. What did they say? Let's pick this game, folks. So, who's going to the Super Bowl out of the AFC? I mean, we have the Bengals. Maybe this is their year. Willie Anderson's up; he's a finalist for the Hall of Fame. Maybe they're building some momentum. Maybe this is the year of the Bengal. You never know. Ricky, I'll start with you, and I'll give my pick last since people have actually already heard it if they listen to FPC radio. But I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Kyle, then Braden, and then I'll close it out.
Bengals had a great run, but as I said earlier in Week 17, they almost had to have everything go perfect just to win on a last-second field goal in a game where they had the ball for the final 6 minutes. If they could duplicate that, all power to them. How do you pick against Patrick Mahomes? You just can't in this situation, especially at home where he's been dominant in his playoff career. I think the game will be somewhat close into the second half. It's one of those things where like Cincinnati could win like a backdoor cover because what's the spread, like 7?
Yep.
So I'll say 37-31 Kansas City.
So I've basically been using my goal line guide to guide me through these playoffs, and that's how I've picked. In wildcard weekend, I was 5 for 6. Divisional round, I was 1 for 4 though. I did pick the Chiefs, so that was the one I got right. And I'm going to pick them again. And I already talked about like passing wise, like the edge is there, but rushing wise in the red zone, or especially in the goal line, it's not so much the offense, it's the defense. The Chiefs have allowed a rushing touchdown on 33% of carries inside the 5. The Bengals have allowed 58%. So just that massive disparity leads to a big disparity in goal line grades. 82 for the Chiefs rushing, 78 for the Chiefs passing, as opposed to down at 60.5 and 63.5 for the Bengals rushing and passing, respectively. So that big a disparity. I'm going with the Chiefs. I'm going them to cover the spread, actually, 34-26.
Kind of going back to what I said earlier, I just think this team, I think they're locked in right now, just going through, I think the ups and downs they had early in the season. I think they've kind of adjusted well to what kind of punches were thrown at them early in the season. And I think that includes, the tricks that the Bengals kind of had up their sleeve. I think Reed was out coached late in that game. So I think those tricks are going to kind of change. And I think Reed's going to have a lot of just nuances cooked up for this one. I do think this will be kind of like the Titans AFC Championship game a couple years ago, where maybe the score isn't as close as the game kind of feels. I just don't think the Chiefs offense is going to get stopped enough. So I'm going to go Chiefs 34, Bengals 21.
Ricky asks, how can you pick against Patrick Mahomes? Well, you could be delusional like me and maybe pick with emotion as opposed to your head. And that's what I'm doing right now. And it's not necessarily picking against the Chiefs. I get the feeling there's something wacky is going to happen in this game. You have two offenses that are capable of scoring at will. Just like we saw last week with the Buffalo game. And I don't think the Bengals are on Buffalo's level quite yet, although I have high regard for their quarterback and his ability and what he's shown early on. I get the feeling that this is going to be a wacky, upside down, backwards AFC Championship game that ultimately ends up with somehow the Bengals, the Cincinnati Bengals, getting to the Super Bowl. And I'm mostly picking this so I can rub it in people's faces if I'm right and everyone else is wrong, because I'm assuming most people are going to be picking the Chiefs. So I like to be a little bit different. But I have the Bengals winning this one 34-31. Very identical, actually.
Yeah, we love the 34 score.
It's good. Well, it's just it's this era of NFL football. I mean, that's the money number right there. About 31 to 34 points.
All picked
offenses score on a regular basis. I mean, we saw it with Tampa. We've seen it with the Chiefs. We've seen it with these other games. High 20s, right at the 30 mark. Maybe the 34 was a high bubble, but you know what I'm saying. 34 points generally, you're going to win every game for the most part. But yeah, I got the Bengals in this one. So all right, we got one half. We got the AFC half. Let's figure out the NFC half. And look, it's a round 3. Obviously, 2 divisional opponents meeting for the third time. The 49ers just absolutely own the Rams. for whatever reason. They just it doesn't matter. I think they're 5-1 in their last 6 games, including winning both games this year. I think the Rams, you can look at top to bottom, have probably, I would think, more talent. I mean, I think the 49ers are very sneakily talented. I just think they get a little bit of a knock because of their quarterback. And, obviously quarterbacks are going to be the face of the franchise no matter what. And you sit there and like, oh, the 49ers aren't talented. Well, they do have a lot of talent. I mean, Deebo Samuel, obviously, the defense, Fred Warner, Joey Bosa. What did I say? Did I say Joey Bosa?
Yeah.
Okay. Nick. Bosa. I did this on Friday too. A Bosa. We're just gonna call him a Bosa. They have a Bosa on their defense, and that's all you really need to know because they're essentially the same guy. But it's puzzling to me how this 49ers team continues to beat this Rams team. And I'm not the biggest Rams fan, although I'm going to have to put my foot in my mouth here if they win again, and maybe my criticism of Sean McVay will have to go dormant for a little bit. But I find it puzzling that the 49ers just have their number, and that makes me sit here and say, well, I like the Rams. They score more. They let up about the same amount defensively. I trust as crazy as it sounds, I don't know if I trust their quarterback more. I think their quarterback is I think he's better, right?
He's certainly more talented, like the arm talent, the accuracy, like all the tangible aspects of quarterback. Yes, for sure.
Mean he's
trust though. You said the word trust, right? That's the word you're getting caught up on, right? Do you trust him more?
On that one.
Yeah, no. I will say I think it's fair, but I think Stafford winning the last 2 playoff games, especially one right against Tom Brady. Like, we could talk about the Bucs defense all you want. You went and just beat the greatest quarterback of all time in a playoff game. Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers haven't done that yet. So I don't know. I think Stafford's maybe earned a bit more trust, to be fair. But I understand your hesitation, though, I will say.
Yeah, I'm still hoping my prediction from November rings true and he throws a huge interception today to lose this game. Then I'd really lay into him. But say what you want about Jimmy G. And I know, look, he's not that. This isn't the same situation as people want to so easily compare the two. Oh, well, they just win. Well, no. Brady was better than Jimmy G is right now. Like I think, and you can't necessarily trust him because he's always good for some boneheaded throw or some, like last week I saw him make a few throws that looked like they were knuckleballs. I mean, that's how slow they were going, and I thought they were going to be picked off. But he wins football games.
Mm-hmm.
He wins football games, and it's not necessarily. And this is the great and the best thing about football. The great thing about quarterbacking. It's not necessarily the totality of your game. It's about making the right plays at the very right moments. Critically efficient.
Yep.
That's the key word. Critically efficient. And
another quarterback that Rodgers hasn't beaten in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the best drive of the game he orchestrated was the final one of the game, and it got them in position to get a field goal, win the game. So when he needed to, he did. Yeah. So, and to be fair, he also had a couple of throws that were dropped. Like there was a big one to George Kittle that would have been potentially.
He started 0 for 4, and I think 3 of those 4 were drops, and some really nice throws in there.
I think it was Brandon Ayuk as well, and it looked it was both like the Ayuk and Kittle drops are really good passes, and then it was the ones that he should have been maybe drops, weren't as great passes that his receivers made plays on that like kind of bailing him out. So there's a bit of balance on both sides, to be fair.
Yeah, and
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and look, so so all the people saying, "Oh, Jimmy G sucks, he can't win this game." I'm sitting here thinking, like, maybe they do win this game because I'm looking at the biggest discrepancy. Like, it's not necessarily the passing yards, because I know the difference between passing yards and the rushing yards are generally the same, what they average each game, respectively. But I think that difference in rushing yards per game and the 49ers' ability to rush is infinitely more of an advantage for the 49ers than the advantage of the Rams' potential potent passing attack, because I look at Deebo Samuel as maybe being the most important player in this game, top to bottom, because I think he's a guy who's going to have to get it done on both sides of the ball. We've seen it so far in this postseason. He hasn't necessarily racked up the passing or the receiving yardage, But that obviously doesn't matter because he can control the game on the ground, and I think we're going to try to see that. We saw that at the end of the Packers game, him with that big run to basically close the game out. I think you're going to see something similar this week where, this 49ers offense is going to have to control the clock and be able to pick up big first downs like that on second and third down. So if Jimmy G is efficient, if he does everything right like he does in these big games, the 49ers could very well win this game. And as much as I, will give us a little bit more credit each time Matt Stafford actually wins a playoff game, I still don't trust him because, twice in that Bucs game, and I'm sorry, Bucs fans, but this is going to stick in your stomach and stick in your gut. But early in that game, he throws a pass 4 yards behind his receiver in the end zone, and it goes through Jordan Whitehead's hands. That's a critical play early on that you turn the ball over in the end zone that drastically changes the outlook of that game. Not only from a in that moment situation, but from a Matt Stafford confidence situation. And then fast forward to the very last drive, the clinching drive right before Cooper Kupp makes the big play. He fumbled the ball and somehow got it back. So Matt Stafford, as much as you can give him credit for not throwing interceptions, and like I said, I'm hoping, I want to be right here. I want to be right about him throwing that interception. He hasn't yet, and you have to give him credit for that. But I am not ready to sit here and say I trust. That's why I hesitated, Kyle. I hesitated earlier, and when the word trust came up, and I was about to say Matt Stafford right after it. So I'm almost. I don't want to give away my pick because if you didn't listen to me on Friday, you would be surprised when I did give my pick. But I'm almost starting to talk myself out of it, which kind of makes you believe that I've picked the Rams, and we'll get into that later after we do our prop bets. But I'm just looking at it, and the most crucial aspect of this game has to be that 49ers rushing attack. And I'll let you go, Ricky, and let me know if you disagree, agree, or have something else in mind.
Well, I will say this, Jeff Garcia, Mina Kimes isn't wrong. I loved her analogy of Jimmy G getting he's the guy that does the fewest work on the group project that you all get an A, but hey, you get an A. And I think what's good is that he comes through, like Kyle said, late in the game against Green Bay, and I dug up this stat looking up something else. Last 2 minutes of a half this season, Garoppolo has 7 touchdowns, 1 interception, and including the Week 18 game against the Rams where they're not here without him.
Critically efficient.
He came down the field to get it done. I'll flip it because I'm sure we'll talk more about the Niners offense a little bit later. I'll focus on the Rams side. And Matt Stafford's going to put up his numbers, and luckily for him, the loss, if they did lose last week, it would have been pinned on him because how do you fumble 4 times? I have no idea. But look at the Rams in the 2 games against San Francisco. They can't run the football. And they try, and they just can't do it. Tony Michel had 20 carries for 40 yards a few weeks ago. Cam Akers is barely averaging 2-3 yards a carry. The Niners are for Aaron Donald and Von Miller and Leonard Floyd, the Niners are the tougher run defense. And if the Rams can't run, Stafford has 4 picks against them this year. So to me, it's kind of like with Cincinnati. Can LA provide enough balance to where Bosa and Werner and Amenahu and these guys don't just pin their ears back and go? Because to me, that would be big trouble for the Rams. So you don't have to run for 200 yards, but it's give me something, because San Francisco's own time possession, both meetings they beat them this year.
And I think one thing that stands out to me about Jimmy G, I think, if anything, I think he's kind of gotten the ball out quicker, and knowing how the Rams kind of play defense. Be interesting to watch if they're going to blitz him more today or just kind of sit back and try to play coverage against the intermediate throws, just because it's a tough kind of matchup to kind of swallow, I guess, for the Rams defense, where, if you want to blitz, Garoppolo's going to get the ball out quick and like Ian said, efficiently. And I think this is also, if you sit back like that, though, this is one of the faster, running back groups or Deebo Samuel groups, whatever you want to call it. I just think their speed and obviously how much motion they use pre-snap, I think it's been one of the highest in the league since Kyle Shanahan's been the coach. So there's definitely a slippery slope to, I think, how the Rams defense has to approach this game up front. So that's kind of the top thing for me, is how that's going to go, and how Jimmy G is going to respond if they do kind of play more coverage in this one. Is he going to kind of continue to get the ball out quick, make the good decisions, or are we going to see kind of more throws into traffic and tip balls go about?
All right, so I mean, and Ricky, you said this too, but Ian, I agree wholeheartedly in that the 49ers need, like, the importance to run is like imminent for them. Like, they need to be able to control the clock, but also that's how you want to attack these defenses. And I think you can say that for both teams. So I think the run game is actually going to be really important. I'm usually the guy that, okay, especially for the Rams, if you've got a quarterback like Stafford and you trust him, I guess Ian obviously doesn't, but Ian's not the coach of the Rams. But if McVay trusted, then you got to pass a lot.
We are the same age, though. In the oh no, I'm sorry, the coach. Yeah, me and the coach of the Rams, we're the same age, which kind of bugs me a little bit. So, but anyway.
Wait, so Stafford's younger then, or is he older? I can't remember. His back, right? His back might be older than yours.
Stafford's 33, McVay's 35. So me and McVay are obviously one and the same.
I'm surprised that McVay's not eating breakfast with him instead of Cooper Kupp. But anyway, both, like, so I think there's numbers to kind of point to where both these defenses are better against the pass, and it's especially, again, back to the goal line grade inside the 5. Both teams have the best rate of allowing touchdowns, like worst for opposing offense is best for them on defense. 20% touchdowns allowed on passes inside their own 5-yard line. That was the best rate in the league. So both of them really good at that, especially up close. If you're going to beat them, it's up the middle running. 48% of touchdowns, 48% touchdown rate allowed by the Rams inside their own 5-yard line running, 53% for the 49ers. So much better than the 20% passing, right? So I think the run game important everywhere, but especially important in the red zone and near the goal line. And that might be like who can punch those touchdowns in might be the key factor.
Yeah, and like I said, if we're going to rely on the rushing attack or lean towards whatever team has the better attack, that's, to me, it's easy. It's the 49ers. And to mention Cam Akers, talk about 4 fumbles last week. He had 2 huge ones, one on the 1-yard line at the end of half, and 2 obviously at the end of the game that gave the Buccaneers an opportunity to tie it. So, all right. So that means let's get into our props for the NFC Championship game. That's not what I want to do. Deebo Samuel, NFC Championship game. Is he going to score? Is it a of course or not this time? And we'll start with you, Ricky.
I'm going to say no. And I'm gonna say no only because how healthy is he? I think he can do enough to kind of provide an impact in the game, but he took a big hit in the Packer game last week. And yes, he's had an extra day to rest that, and it's the playoffs. But at some point, like, that's going to come back to bite you a little bit. Maybe he'll get a big play to get him into the goal line, and he'll have a good day statistical wise, but I don't think he finds the end zone.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's definitely some guys right now that I don't want to say are playing under the radar, but definitely probably playing their best football, which is big for this 49er team. You look at Brandon Ayuk, I think, has gotten more comfortable. You look at Elijah Mitchell. I just think those guys are maybe going to be the ones that get more chances closer to the red zone and closer to the goal line. So I do think he has a lot of big plays, but I don't think he scores.
Again, back to the goal line grade. To me, if the 49ers are going to score, it's probably going to be on the ground. So I'm looking for the players who can run the football to score touchdowns. And that does, in theory, help Deebo. The problem is the 49ers, they have tons of players who could potentially rush touchdowns. And obviously Elijah Mitchell being like the big and first and foremost. I don't know what the touchdowns are odds are on both Mitchell or Deebo, but if they're pretty close, if the odds are riding high on Deebo's recent streak, I would definitely favor Elijah Mitchell for sure. Even if there was a bit of a separation in odds, that's probably makes sense. So, and then, Kyle Juszczyk, they can always run it with Juszczyk. And who's not to say that, maybe as a way to get George Kittle going, do they let him run the football into the end zone too? So part of me wants to say yes, because of the skill set. And again, running really going to favor that on the Rams, but I'm going to say no, just because of all the multitude of options the 49ers have. And it's this question you're asking me, Deebo or the field, I think I'll take the field and say no.
All right. Well, next question. We talked about Cam Akers and the Rams rushing attack, or maybe lack thereof, against the 49ers. Is Akers going to score in this game? Ricky, definitely, or not happening?
Again, I'm going to go with no. To me, you can't rely on Cam Akers right now because, yeah, he's got the fresher legs, but he's not been able to take care of the football. If there's a Ram that's going to score a rushing touchdown, honestly, I think it's Sony Michel. I think he has the more big game track record. I would try to get him the ball a little bit more today and see what you can do. So with Akers, I'll say no, but I think the Rams run one with Michel.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think Ricky kind of went where I was going with Sony Michel. I think the fumbles are going to make McVay a little bit worried in a matchup where he hasn't won much against Kyle Shanahan. So I think it's more of a Michel day. So I'm going to say no.
I don't even know if it's the fumbles. I think it's the game plan. How do you attack the defense? Because one of the things they did with Akers a lot was run him to the outside. They wanted to get him out in space, and that's not really Michel's game. Like, and that's like Ian. You know the Bucs really well, right? You don't beat them by trying to run up the gut on them, right? So Sony Michel was probably never destined to have a good game against the Bucs. Again, with this 49ers team and like a guy like Fred Warner, who's kind of just like space to space tackler, you almost maybe want to attack him up the middle more. So again, it's the same thing as Debo, right? Like in theory, okay, I want the guys that are going to run the rushing touchdowns, but I mean, who's to say Darrell Henderson doesn't even get some go? Probably not. They probably prefer Akers over Henderson, but I agree with you with Keeler, especially saying Michel is probably the guy that gets not just one, but maybe multiple touchdowns, especially if he get one early and they just like McVay feels like that's the edge. They'll just keep going back to him. So yeah, I'm going to say no as well.
There we go. Got to unmute my mic. Debo. Speaking of Debo Samuel, we haven't mentioned Cooper Kupp too much in this game, but both the big time receivers, probably the two best on their respective teams. Who has more total yards in the game, Debo or Cooper? And once again, total yards, not receiving yards.
I'll go Cooper Kupp. And I think it's largely because I think San Francisco's strategy, and Kyle kind of saw this last week, was let your number one receiver eat and take everybody else away. And maybe they kind of do that thing with Stafford here, where Beckham in 2 games against the Niners hasn't really done anything. I mean, make Van Jefferson make a play, make Tyler Higbee make a play. So I think Kupp will have over 100 yards, and I think with that, he'll get over Devo's number.
Just on a side note, I'm pretty sure that was the defense the Bucs called on the very last play. Let Cooper Kupp eat and govern everyone else. What do you think, Braden?
Yeah, I'm going to go Cooper Kupp as well. I do think this is going to be kind of one of those days where better secondary in the Rams, in my opinion. I think there's going to be just so many limited plays that they kind of win deep. I don't know if the 49ers will have as much yards after the catch either compared to what we're used to seeing. So I'll go Cooper Kupp.
We asked this last week, right? Or no, it wasn't. It was receiving yards, right? Between Debo and no, it was total yards. Yeah. Debo and Devontae Adams. And I picked against Adams and said Debo just because the rushing would push him enough. And it didn't. Adams on his own had enough receiving yards to match Debo's total yards. So I think that'll probably be the case here again with Cooper Kupp. So I will take Cooper Kupp over Samuel.
OBJ, we haven't even mentioned him, and maybe he's in the conversation for being the Rams' best receiver. I don't think so, but he's still very talented. Is he going to have over or under 64.5 yards in this game? And mind you, he's starting to come on pretty well with the Rams over the last handful of weeks. So big game for OBJ or not?
I'll go with the under because, again, I think it's more just making sure that Cooper Kupp does everything and everybody else does nothing. Beckham in Week 18 against the Niners had 2 catches for 18 yards. And I know it was the first matchup between these two teams, but he had 2 catches per 18 in that game as well. So maybe he hits one big one, but if the Niners can take him away again, I'll go with the under.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. I think you just see him kind of do more of his damage in the red zone and closer to the goal line with fades or just kind of these whip routes. So kind of think we'll see the same thing again, even if he gets a touchdown. So I'm going to go under.
He did hit the over last week, 6 catches for 69 yards, and that's a nice game, but it doesn't exude a ton of confidence to think that he can smash this over. Like that's maybe, he maybe maxes out at 70 yards. So it's tough to really think he can go. There's not much breathing room to take the over here, go over 64.5. So I think because of that, I'll also take the under.
All right. Oh, there we go. Come on.
You're as shifty as 49ers.
I'm all over the place
You're
here.
a Kyle Shanahan play call. You have no idea all the motion coming in.
And my mouse is very sensitive, so sometimes my finger will...
Kind of like Garoppolo, maybe. I don't know. Maybe
yeah,
not.
Exactly. So last but not least, Garoppolo and Stafford, 2 quarterbacks, more combined touchdowns or turnovers in the NFC Championship game. And, look, there's always potential that this could be a turnover fest. And with these 2 quarterbacks, it's not off the table. Ricky, what do you think? More touchdowns or more turnovers?
Going through the math, I have it at 2 touchdowns, 3 turnovers. So
Ooh.
it will be turnovers. 2 by Garoppolo, 1 by Stafford.
Oh man, I wish there was a tie option, but since there isn't,
Oh no, there is same amount.
man,
You
I'll
gotta
say. Sorry, I couldn't see that pop up in my way. Yeah, I'll say same amount. I think it'll be 3 each. So I think we'll see. I think the turnovers would kind of come all together kind of late in this game. So I'll go same amount.
I guess, and you're counting rushing touchdowns too, right? Like, so if one of them runs it in, that really could skew it. Because I think the other thing leading this is you're not saying interceptions, you're saying turnovers. So fumbles count too. So because Garoppolo hasn't thrown a touchdown in either playoff win. So maybe they go 3 straight wins, he doesn't throw a touchdown. Peyton Manning's done that before. Not to say that Garoppolo is Peyton Manning, but like a team is capable to rely on a defense when your quarterback isn't playing well to that extent, especially if you're a good, strong run game that can score touchdowns on the ground, which, again, we talked about the 49ers being able to. So, yeah, I assume Garoppolo's not going to throw any touchdowns here. Can Stafford throw for more touchdowns than the 2 of them turn it over? I'm going to say no. I think there's interceptions, fumbles going to happen. Might be. I like Ricky's number of 2 and 3. That makes sense to me. So yeah, more turnovers.
All right. That means with these done, prop bets, it's our last game pick. Last game pick before we have to pick the Super Bowl next week or 2 weeks from now. So same thing. We'll start with Ricky. Work our way around clockwise. And then we'll come up with me, and I'll give you my pick, and we'll let you know who's going to be playing in Super Bowl 56. So, Ricky, take it away.
We don't have the touchdown prop this week, but I'll give you a fun one. Tyler Higbee has 3 touchdowns in 2 games against the Niners this year. So, if you want for entertainment purposes, might want to look at Tyler Higbee today.
I thought you were going to say Tyler Higbee was going to get 3 touchdowns today. Like, oh, that's great. That's call that shot.
I thought that's where you're going too. I was
that is a good one though. Maybe getting a touchdown.
No,
makes
we're
sense.
not going 3 touchdowns today. But besides that, there's something about this Niners team. I don't know. I'm not going to go with Giant vibes, Raven vibes, whatever vibes it is. And I'd rather be wrong picking Shanahan than be wrong picking McVay. Because I thought the Rams would beat them both times this year. They didn't. There's just something about big moments. Shanahan's been to a Super Bowl. McVay has as well. This is going to be virtually a Niners home game. I think they said estimates like 65% of that stadium is Niners fans. So is it really a home game for the Rams in their own stadium? Robbie Gould's a better kicker than Matt Gay. Robbie Gould wins the game at the end. Niners 23, Rams 20, and we get another Chiefs-Niners Super Bowl. Great.
Oh, right. It's me next. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I'm about as ready to go as Stafford is apparently in Ian's mind. You can't trust me. So again, so quickly, the goal line grades I gave for or the data gave for these teams, rushing the 49ers at 80.5. It's the second best of any team this week. Only the Chiefs running is better. Rams at 72. So it does favor the 49ers, but not that far off. Passing 61 for the Rams, so not great, but 45 for the 49ers, the worst goal line grade of any of the 4 teams this week in any facet. They've only scored a touchdown passing on 27% of their passing plays inside the 5, which again, 65% touchdown on their run plays. So that is where it happens, but I think that disparity in quarterback play is enough to give me to give the Rams the win in my eyes. 28-26, Los Angeles gets the quote unquote home win apparently.
I think the biggest difference to me is the Rams defense. I think this is going to be kind of all those pieces that they've brought in recently kind of coming through. Von Miller's really looking like 2018 Von Miller right now on a hot stretch. So I think that's going to be the biggest difference to me. And I just think we've seen enough of Stafford playing good football recently that I don't want to say the word we've used a lot in trust, but I think he's feeling it right now, and I think he's just kind of seeing the field so well. So I think it'll actually come down to a Garoppolo interception, not a Stafford one at the end. I got Rams 26, 49ers 20.
Now, I almost talked myself out of picking the Rams throughout the show, and I'm still trying to question why I thought picking the Rams was the better choice. Maybe because I have them higher in my Super Bowl pool that some of us are a part of, and I like to win. I don't know. I'm I'm sticking with the Rams. I still think they're going to squeeze this one out. I think it's incredibly hard to beat a team 3 times in a season, and as much as the Rams are puzzling to me, I don't know if the 49ers quite have enough to do what I hope they would do and eliminate the Rams. But I think the Rams are a little bit too talented. I think they have enough to make up for any sort of mistakes that they might made. And I think maybe the pressure is working in their advantage. They know they have to win. I mean, they have to win this. I mean, let's face it. They lose this, they get knocked out before even making to the Super Bowl. I mean, this is a huge failure on their part in terms of collecting all this talent. I think the talent's enough. You brought up a great point about Von Miller kind of really starting to make a huge impact. I think he's going to ultimately do that today. So I'll take the Rams as much as I'd like to see the 49ers win. I don't know if I can do that. I hope I'm wrong. So, all right, folks.
I also hope I'm wrong. I've got a fantasy playoff challenge where it definitely behooves me to have the Bengals 49ers make it. I got a bunch of players with bonuses, so
well,
I maybe reverse jinx it and saying Chiefs Rams. So
that's why I'm probably sticking with the Rams with my pick, because I'm kind of hoping for that, because all I got to do is just win a couple games and I win. But anyways, thank you everyone for tuning in. Stay tuned. Obviously, AFC Championship game coming up at 3:05, I believe, and then of course NFC Championship at 6:40. We'll be back next week to obviously break down not next week, the week after, to break down the Super Bowl, and then of course tune in all week this week for FPC Radio Live as we kind of start previewing that and potentially talk more Tom Brady and hopefully another season for the GOAT. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Full Press NFL. And of course, wherever you get your apps, download the Full Press Coverage app. Have a good one. We'll